Nestile, who is also the Minister for Tourism, Investment, Creative Industries, Culture, and Information.
Thank you very much. Actually, I wanted to speak with you about two main issues. Of course, I'm sure Honorable Jeremiah Norbert would have spoken to you about the jazz in Miku yesterday, the first official activity for Jazz and Arts Festival 2025. And I think he would have told you that it was a tremendous success. The turnout was fantastic. The whole vibe was really one to behold. And for the first time, I think it was a success story for Miku. And I'm sure you'd have heard many patrons and even persons who just saw the photos already talking about the site becoming main stage jazz and whatnot. So I think that's very good that we have gotten so excited about the venue. I think it's a venue that from now on everybody would want to use it now that it has been discovered. And I'm sure we're going to do a lot of work on it to get it ready for other shows in the coming months. We have Carnival coming up. We have Creole Heritage Month, Emancipation. But the point is, it's going to become a major site to the whole. And if yesterday's turnout and support by the public is anything to go by, we can expect a bumper Jazz and Arts Festival. And of course, on Wednesday, we have the official opening. Our first artist comes in today, preparing for Wednesday night. And let me inform you that there are no tickets available. So, Hamilton, please don't ask me, you know, any tickets. But the ticket sales have been going quite well, very well. We're very encouraged. I think we're trending ahead of where we were last year. So that's a very good sign, and not just for the opening, but for main stage performances too, especially Kingdom Night. So we're really looking forward to a bumper Jazz and Arts Festival. The arts component too is also shaping up very nicely, and we're looking forward to some of the signature events that will take place. The other event, the other matter I wanted to raise with you, I think comments yesterday by the deputy political leader of the United Workers Party has probably even overshadowed it because there was a lot of talk about data, and you might have heard accusations of manipulating the data and cooking the data. So I don't know whether you want to ask any particular question about it. My dear friend, what's her name? You have any questions about it? No? About the data and all the accusations about the data? Oh, you don't know? Well,
Oh, yes,
yeah.
yes, will you address it, please?
Yeah. Well, I don't know whether you want to ask any question about it, then I respond.
Yeah, well, I think what has been suggested in the IMF report, I read that you're questioning the waste collected. So I think they're saying better to do that in-person interview versus what is being done. So your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I'm glad you spoke about the report because when you look at the report, and maybe I give you a little background to it, when COVID came, there's a decision, of course, of obvious reasons, rather than do face-to-face interviews, it would be better to obtain the data via online means. The thing about it is that when persons fill out the online ED card, you have to ask permission to send promotional material and information to them. So they would tick yes, and if you tick no, they cannot send anything to you. So it's only those who tick yes will get the online questionnaire because you cannot send unsolicited, information, questionnaires to persons. So you're already shrinking your population size. So only those that said yes, you can send material to me. And of course, the online questionnaires would be sent to persons who said yes, you can send promotional material to me. And then a smaller percentage of persons would respond to the questionnaire. So in the report, and that arising out of the 2023 review, there was a concern by some of the mission members that the sample size, in their view, was too small. they felt they had to have a minimum threshold, and it was slightly below that. It was not a consensus view from what I was told, but there was a strong view from, and it's reflected in the report, and it's the report of the IMF and the regional organization, that the sample size was too small. Now, if your sample size is too small, it means your margin of error, increases, your plus or minus, meaning that it can be higher or it can be lower, because you're saying your sample size is not sufficiently representative. But the report also indicates that when they compare it with what figures they have for American, US travelers from their other sources, it shows that what they have for the expenditure of American travelers is lower than what our data is saying that same American traveler is spending. So there's a disparity. And I think somebody quoted 14% disparity or so. So the Americans have the assessment, we have our assessment, and there's a difference between the two. And the reasoning is that it might be because the sample size is too small, it's creating an upward bias. Now remember, that's online, huh? But the same report, if you read it, says in 2019, when we were still doing the face-to-face, and I didn't carry my phone with me to show you, to tell you exactly which paragraph. I think it might have been 22 or something like that. In 2019, the St. Lucia quotation used by the the Central Tourism Authority then, was a lot higher than what the American figure was, 2019. Now, it really shocks me when I hear Dominic Fede and the United Quest Party says, the figures we use in 2023 are inflated and we're manipulating the figures. But the same report says in 2019, they almost double the spending limit. And I can give you the exact paragraph, but you can go to the report and you can see it. So in 2019, when they use inflated figures, what were they doing? Were they manipulating? And I think they need to be honest and say that in 2019, when we were doing face-to-face interviews, face-to-face, because the online changed during COVID, which is after 2019. So what happened when in 2019? Was Dominic Fede manipulating the figures? But the bigger point, though, is that there are methodological concerns because you need to get the methodology right. And since June last year, we met, there was a meeting between all the players involved, and we agreed that we would go back to the face-to-face. And for us, we said we're going to do both face-to-face and online to ensure we have an even bigger response. So we have acquired all the tablets and everything else to ensure we do the face-to-face, and we're also going to continue with the online. So we're trying to cover as much of a larger sample as possible to ensure that the methodological issues can be overcome. Personally, I believe there will always be a disparity between the American assessment of how much each US traveler spends and our assessment. Likewise, I've had reason to see the assessment from the UK Statistical Office. And their assessment of how much each UK traveler spends is a lot higher than what we assess. So you'll have between different countries with different methodologies, variations. So any talk that we are cooking the figures or changing the figures, and in fact, I heard a clip from Dominic Fede saying last night that the whole budget has to be discarded because it's based upon figures that are inflated. Now, that has to be has to be a statement which really exposes the paucity of thinking involved, because the revenue projections for the country is actual money received that will be received at the Treasury. That's not estimated spending. That's actual money that's going to be received. The loans in there are actually loans that will be taken. A budget is not premised on estimated visitor spending. I mean, this is totally, I've never heard any such economics or understanding of public financing. But we are working to make sure the methodology is as tight as possible and it's as valid and reliable as possible. And that is our intention. But we stand by the figures because we believe that even if the sample might be slightly smaller than what they believe is acceptable, it is still a very good statement of visitor expenditure in the country. And anybody who's suggesting anything different, no matter how you try and spin it to argue that tourism is in decline and tourism is in a dismal place, you just cannot make that stick. You cannot. Because people are seeing, I mean, the occupancy rates are the highest that they've ever been. You know, the arrivals last year was the highest that it has ever been, even if less rooms in the country. You cannot deny that away. And we're expecting this year to be even bigger because as secrets come online from the 1st of June and as we see more activity taking place, we expect the numbers to be bigger. So a lot of the talk about the numbers and who is cooking numbers is really way off. And like I said, the report cites both 2019 when Dominic Fede was Minister of Tourism, and it cites 2023. And since then, in any event, since then we have strengthened the methodological approach to make sure that there is no question about it.
That same report also indicated a lack of information coming from the CIE. Moving forward, how does the government plan to, I guess, share more information with the public and I guess also these international organizations about the program?
Well, I don't know what they mean by lack of information. I mean,
I said to improve on transparency and accountability in the program.
again, if you're going to ask me, let's promote transparency, so give me the files of everybody who apply, we cannot do those things. And if somebody comes to me from an international organization and wants to know specific data that I believe, according to the agreement we have, we cannot share persons' information. There'll always be a limit on what information you can share. If they need numbers, they need which countries people apply from, we can give that. But we also have an obligation when somebody apply and we accept and to protect the privacy of their information that we have to do so. And I've said so in public before. I mean, all of a sudden people are talking about accountability and transparency, meaning to just answer any question I ask you. We also have a responsibility to respect, the privacy of persons' personal information. So we will release all the information. And in early June, we will issue the annual report for the CIP. We will also issue the operational audit that was done, so you can see what was said. We share all information that we are required to share with our international partners. And if they believe the unit is not sharing any information with them, they should feel free to contact the Prime Minister or myself, and we'll make sure they get information that they need. But, I mean, we share as much information as we can, and like I said, the annual reports will also share all the information that we can share.
Okay, one more question from me, in relation to your portfolio as broadcast and information minister. Little Press Freedom Day is coming up on May 3rd, and again, I ask it. Would the Freedom of Information Act or the bill, there was a draft bill, there was some initiatives.
I've never seen it, yeah.
2009 by.
Yeah, no, and I've not seen it, seriously.
Yeah, so, does the government plan to revise this, probably champion this for the good of
Yeah.
democracy?
Well, I think, and I've been asked the question before, we need to look at the totality of it. Totality of it. With rights come responsibilities. So we will certainly promote your rights. And Freedom of Information Act, I believe, is something we should look at seriously and promote it. But equally, we also have to hold persons who receive information accountable for how they use the information. So one has to come with the other. And I think we will have to spend some more time focusing on it because there was a lot of talk about a new Information Act, which the time has probably arrived for me, certainly as minister, to give more focused attention to this and to make sure But you know the thing about it though is when everybody wants their rights, and when you tell them about their responsibilities, they start criticizing. In other words, I want to have all the rights to write, to say, to ask you information. You must give it to me. But when you say what's your responsibility, it becomes a little more challenging. But we will be giving a lot more attention to that. I think if you ask me in the almost 4 years, which area has probably been least given the least attention, it would be information.
Sorry, are you saying you haven't seen the draft bill?
No, the Freedom of Information Act. I have not seen it.
There was
Bill, yeah, I have not seen it.
put that by the Attorney General Chamber in
Yeah, no,
2000.
I personally have not. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I have not seen it. Yeah, I have not seen it. I know I've seen a draft of the Information Act. In fact, it started under the last government and it carried over onto me, so I had seen it. Yeah, for sure.
Yes, Mr. Minister, just briefly on the jazz thing. I heard the chairman, SMT chairman speak about the new trend in the opening of jazz. What would you say that this concept, the Western, the Zouk, the soca, everything. What does that mix bring in? Is it a wider outreach? Is it looking out for wider outreach of different genders, different choices of people to satisfy the different choices of the public?
Yeah, well, we had made two strategic decisions from last year. One was to increase the number of pure jazz shows we had, so we've had a second show. So there's a Tuesday and Thursday pure jazz show. And this year we extended that for the opening to have country music, which is a new demographic altogether. We never had country music before. So it is about broadening the appeal. And already we're starting to plan for next year. Jazz. So we are in deep discussion now in terms of what new strategic directions we want to take. 'Cause there are a lot of realities we have to face. The costs of a festival of that nature, the amount of emphasis we want to give on developing more local talents, as well as the arts component. The development of the local talent will rest primarily in the community jazz events, not main stage. There's only so many people you can put main stage, but there's so many community jazz festivals. It gives more opportunity for local talent to start to emerge. So we will have to start thinking of how we can promote more local talent, and like I said, that's through the community jazz, and of course, to make sure we have a festival that's still within our means, because we see now it is growing and growing. And if you want to avoid recycling, performers, and you want some of the fresh people who are now trending globally, the cost is significant. So we are already doing a serious review of next year, although this year has just started. But we're already thinking about it, because once this festival finishes, you have to start booking and getting ready for next year. So there's some broader strategic decisions we have to take in terms of where we want to go with the festival. The Friday, the opening is Wednesday this year. The opening is a massive event. I mean, this Wednesday night will probably be the largest, show we've ever had in St. Lucia. From all indications, it's going to be massive. And we have to start even deciding, how does it grow, and how do we manage its growth? And that's what got so many people excited about yesterday when they saw what Miku was offering. And there's so many questions we are asking ourselves in terms of how we manage the development. Another one, for example, the community jazz. We want arts to be part of the community as well. So do we say every community, to get support for the jazz, the music part, must have an arts component as well? Because the development of the arts is also critical for us, whether it is visual arts, performing arts, whatever. So we are already thinking of next year, changing around a lot of the jazz festival. We're hoping by the time the jazz festival is in May, I think by July next year will be 5 years, and elections will be due. So we're hoping we'll have everything in place to make sure we have jazz next year. Yeah, and hope it doesn't stop again.
Because Wednesday is a big night, the next day is a holiday, a lot of people get out. So like the day before.
Yeah.
What about the capacity? Will there be a cap as to the amount of yes, you get
Well, you see, that's the point I was making. We have to watch how it is growing and developing. I mean, last year, Mindo Phillip Park looked close to being filled to capacity, and we're expecting this year to be even bigger. So all those things we have to watch, and also for Carnival too. I mean, Carnival this year is shaping up. That is going to be a massive event, the biggest that we've had. And you have to start talking about how do we manage bands with at least 2,000 revelers on the road. You know, how do you manage that? The route is the route. It's probably one of the best routes you'll find in the Caribbean. But you have to manage bands that are getting larger and larger on the road, and you need to still maintain the experience. Because why people come to us is because of the vibe and the experience we have. And if you start spoiling the experience, you start looking elsewhere because you know when you're a reveler, you've gotten accustomed to the St. Lucia experience, and it's already same. You look for something new, so we have to stop being, make sure we're not same, you know, that kind of thing. That we introduce new elements to the St. Lucian experience. But this year is going to be big, so we really need at this point to sit back and reflect on how we're going to manage for future growth and to ensure growth and ensure experiences that people will never forget, which is why they will want to come back again. So it's an exciting challenge to have, but we're already working on it. And again, when I saw yesterday and I saw the crowd, I saw the whole atmosphere, it really got me excited as to some of the things we can do in Miku. And Miku itself can become a real hub now for cultural events.
Hi, Josiah BC House. Thank you. Josiah BC House 7 TV News. I believe it was a couple of weeks ago. You mentioned on the actual application of having different service providers to tourists being certified. I'm wondering if you can give us a bit of an update on that process, and as well, has there been any challenges in implementing that, especially as the jazz season is coming very near, as well as the
Yeah,
season.
yeah. Well, it's a very good question. We've actually set up a certification unit at the ministry. It's been in existence for just over a year and staffed. And we started the certification with accommodation. As you know, accommodation is the center and everything kind of builds around it. So we have certified quite a few accommodation places, and we're going to continue to do so. We've been doing quite a lot of certification in transport providers, especially taxis. So that too is moving quite quickly. And gradually we'll expand to other service providers. And like I said, the intention is for us to be able to meet some world-class standards in terms of service delivery. And that's really critical for us. So when we boast about being world-class, we are really showing that we've met those standards. And it's also important for us, it is not a punitive process. It is not. It's really a process where we are helping service providers to lift their standards, raise their game to that level. And, you know, so for example, in the accommodation, you can get a conditional certificate if you have not met all the conditions and you're given a period of time by which to meet all the shortfalls that you have. Because like I said, it's not punitive. It's about upgrading and uplifting. So we're going to work with all service providers together and help them raise and meet all the requirements. So it's a process that has started and will continue. There are always challenges because individuals have to be committed to the process as well as you. And if there's a cost element involved, you can imagine there'll be some pushback. Because if all of a sudden you're saying to somebody, you know what, if you have a pool, you must have your certification, you must have your health, you must have this, you must have that, and they start figuring out how much money that's going to cost them. And you have to service this every 6 months, you have to do certain, works to meet standards can incur more costs. And some people would feel, you know what, I really don't want to get involved in that. But we have to make sure we meet those standards, especially in a situation now where people are very litigious. People are very quick to sue if something should happen and you don't have public liability insurance, for example. And it can put a stain on your own operations and on the country's reputation. So we have to work. The unit is working with the service providers, educating them, providing training in some instances. So we open tomorrow the Mon Lay-by. It will be rebranded as the View at the Mon, and I'm inviting all of you. I'm sure you would have received your invitations to join us tomorrow at 5 o'clock at the Mon. It will be a spectacular opening, I can tell you. So even the vendors that will be there, we've been working with them, training. Some of the criticisms that we've had in terms of visitors saying, look, they don't use cash and the vendors don't have point of sale machines, for example. We're trying to address those issues. So again, it's about raising the standards because even the vendors have to be certified as well. So we continue to work with all the different service providers, but we take them category by category and make sure we certify them.
One last question. I wanted to get your opinion on, I think 2 weeks ago, James Fletcher did a presentation at the SLHDA General Meeting where he spoke about sounding the alarm about beachfront properties and rising sea levels and so on. And knowing that some of the property developments that invest in ships and boats and so on the coastline, I wanted to get your opinion on how these kind of threats are influencing policy and influencing our approach to tourism development and protecting the industry and so on.
How do I say it? I think as a politician, first of all, as I said, Lucian, my first reaction is people that are living in low-lying areas before I think about hotels. I don't start off thinking about we should not be building hotels. I am first of all worried about the people that can be affected and whether they should be living there in the first place. I represent a constituency where there are people living along the waterfront, and I worry about them before I worry about the hotels, which is not to say we should not be concerned about the hotels, whatnot. I think we should be very conscious of where we approve for hotels to be built. As far as I know, we don't exactly build hotels right up to the water edges, whatnot. I think there are setbacks that need to be followed and approved by the DCA. And if we believe that the hotels are still being allowed to be built too close to the water, then we should revise that to make sure they're not all up, to the water. But, that's, for my part, and I say that's just my personal view, my first concern is about St. Lucians and those who live on the water edge. I mean, look at in Denver, for example, and, what happens whenever we have any bad weather. So, that becomes my first concern.
We see the sargassum invasion. I know they came up with it.
Yeah.
Sargassum is affecting Fiji Beach, but is it the purview of your ministry to address that? How will it go about addressing that? First question. Second question, you may have had sight of an article published by the Signature Times.
Yeah, I've answered that one already. Yeah.
Concerning the IMF report.
Yeah. I spent quite a while. Yeah, I mean, I actually this morning before I came to cabinet, I went to a beach actually and took a look at some of the cleaning up work that was being done. I mean, it is a concern to us, and I will be speaking with the NCA after cabinet in terms of what we're doing. We've never felt it as badly as we did on this side of the island. Usually it's on the other side. And I think they've given me some explanation why, some changing of the currents and whatnot. So yeah, it is something we're going to address. Over the weekend, there seemed to have been a decline. Last week was terrible, but this weekend, it doesn't seem to have been as bad as it was. So we need to hope it doesn't get any worse and that we can address it. But yes, I'll speak with the NCA to make sure that we have measures in place. And we'll work with the hotels and the SLHTA to make sure that we can address those concerns. It's a real nuisance and plague that's affecting us.
Changing gears a little bit on the opposition side. Tomorrow would be the 100th
What did you say? You're on the opposition side?
Opposition member.
Okay, tomorrow will be the 100th anniversary of Sir John's birth, right? Can you speak to the importance of Sir John in the Ireland's political and economic history? And how did Sir John contribute to the kind of political climate we live in today? Knowing Compton, what would you think of the political culture of the opposition today?
You really change it, you know.
Change it,
I mean, when somebody said a bowl of googly at you, I mean, put it that way, I would have loved to be in a classroom as a lecturer in political science answering that question, more than as a politician and more so a member of the St. Lucia Labour Party. But I think in general, one can say that we know the historical contribution of Sir John has made to our political development in this country. Our two most noted political figures would have been Sir George Charles and Sir John Compton. One took us out of colonialism through the first instances of self-government. When George Charles was the first black man to chair cabinet government in St. Lucia. He was the first chief minister, and of course, John Compton became the first prime minister of St. Lucia, and certainly led us into independence. And one cannot, by any stretch of the imagination, diminish the contribution he made in that regard. His record for the number of elections he won as a leader of a political party is unmatched. And certainly the time he spent in representation in Parliament is also, one of the longest in St. Lucia. So you cannot take away from the political achievements of Sir John Compton. I think, though, there's something about our St. Lucian society that we've not gone beyond some of the political tribalism for us to be able to recognize the contributions of our political leaders. George Charles, until Labour Party came into power in 1997, was almost a forgotten man, except for the Labour Party. And St. Lucia Labour Party named a school, named the airport after him, and now we will be erecting a bus of him. Because to recognize the contribution he made, you talk about, being in a white establishment and one black man leading trade union and a political party and becoming, chief minister. So that was something we felt must be recorded in history. And Sir John for his own achievements. But we don't seem to have that culture in St. Lucia. Once you decide to give somebody praise, you either get vilified or you get, recognized for it, and it's in equal measure. And it's a little sad, but you cannot deny Sir John Compton's contribution. And a lot of people will tell you now the politics in recent times would have changed significantly. It has probably become more divisive, more tribal. But the thing about those things is that every generation says that. The generation of the 70s during radical politics, people would tell you it was highly politicized and militancy was at its highest. But that's what globally existed. The 70s and even to the early 80s was a period of global radicalism and militancy, and a lot of left-leaning parties got into power with very strong left-wing ideologies. And people will tell you, no, those were the worst days. Now we live in a social media age. The tools are different and the platforms are different. And some people will tell you it's a lot more vicious now. In the old days, people go on a platform or there's one television station, there may be two radio stations, and when somebody says something, it takes so long for it to be disseminated and whatnot. Today, everything I'm saying now is live, and, people are hearing it right away, and globally too. So you can imagine if I say something unkind about somebody else from the opposition, is instantly heard and known. And if it proves to be untrue, but it's already been said. Let me tell you, every day things are said about me. I get my daily slander on social media, and that's it. There's no issue of truth or factual statement. People just say things about you. And if it is orchestrated and organized, you just have to face up to it. And that was different to the past, you know. And you'd hear stories of politicians saying things about each other, but still going on shake hands and having a drink together and cracking jokes with each other. And there's some very noted politicians on both sides who were very good friends and enjoying, you know, a drink and a lime and something. But that doesn't seem to be present today. You almost don't see that kind of you know relationships in the politics of today. So it's a different time, and John Compton is not of the present, and it would be interesting to have it's interesting to speculate how he would have responded. Because if you remember from our political history, the Rick Wayne versus the John Compton, the George Odlum and Crusader versus George Odlum, Rick Wayne and the Star, you know, those days it's different. It's the social media days, and it's just different, and it's more brutal, I think, though, personally. And you just have to stand up to it and, you know, take the blows and learn to give blows too, you know. And I guess the characteristics for a modern day politician in a social media age is so different to what it was, you know, decades ago.
Okay, final question. Just one more. That's it. Okay, so we will now hear from Honorable Dr. Virginia Albert Poyet, Minister for the Public Service, Labor and Gender Affairs.
Okay, good afternoon. I want to address you briefly on two critical issues. One, this week we are actually celebrating Labor Day activities, and on May 1st is Labor Day. And I know some people, once they hear labor, they begin to think of politics, but labor has to do with workers. It has to do with the labor movement that started in the 1930s, where workers fought for better wages and better working conditions. And in fact, it was the labor movement that gave rise to political parties in the 1930s. So there is a very direct correlation between political parties in St. Lucia and the labor movement. On May 1st, we had a lunch on the 23rd of April. We had a lunch of Labor Day activities, and we actually spoke on revolutionizing health and safety, the role of AI and digitization at work. And we are seeing now how artificial intelligence can play a critical role in the labor force. And it is one where we need to ensure that workers understand what this is. And some people are a little fearful that artificial intelligence may replace them and maybe reduce the working population. But as indicated by Mr. Jim, our resource person at the session, he indicated that there will be work for persons who are using artificial intelligence. It's just a different modality in the workforce and not a matter of replacing you. And I just want to mention we had the labor fair on Friday at the Derek Walcott Square, where different businesses and trade unions displayed their work and the labor department. And today we have the health screening, which is just outside the Graham Lucy building. On Thursday, we had a consultation here with stakeholders where they look at the ILO Convention number 138 and number 187. The 138 ILO Convention, these are the two fundamental conventions of the ILO. That's among all the others. And if St. Lucia gets to ratify these two conventions, would be almost the first or second country in the entire Caribbean who would have ratified all the ILO conventions. So the 138 convention speaks to minimum age That's the minimum age at which somebody is supposed to work. And anything below that would be considered child labor. So we have the minimum age, and St. Lucia must ratify that convention so we can establish and identify with what we consider to be the minimum age to work. And then we have 187 that speaks to occupational safety and health. In St. Lucia, we have had many challenges with occupational safety and health, especially in the workplace. And government has spent millions of dollars in dealing with mold and air quality. And if we have to improve the situation, we need our occupational safety and health unit in the Department of Labor to address these problems. We have to work with the trade unions, and we must also work with persons in the construction industry, because we do not know whether a lot of the mold that we develop has to do with the way they structure these buildings and how much ventilation or what type of air that comes in. And therefore, we have to do all these treatment, do all kinds of air quality tests and treat mold so that we can ensure that workers work in a safe and healthy environment to do the work. So that I want to stress. And on May 1st, we have Labor Day. Now, we know St. Lucia is almost caught up with jazz around this period, but we ask workers not to lose sight of the importance of workers and the reason why workers need to rally in solidarity with each other so that they can hear from the Prime Minister, myself as Minister with responsibility for labor, and all the trade unions that represent the workers. And that is a time you have to begin to articulate what are the challenges we have in the workplace. People talk about, well, you know, government came up with the minimum wage. There are people who are working way below the minimum wage, so we have tried to improve that. And government has always also introduced a number of initiatives that will improve the quality of life for workers in St. Lucia. And for those of you who are privileged to hearing what transpired in the budget, you would have seen the number of areas where government is actually improving the lot for workers. We have teachers who will be paid during the month of August. Before, temporary teachers were not paid during the month of August. We have the issue of pension or retirement for police officers, officers at Borderley Correctional Facility, and fire, those in the protective services that they can now, after given 20 years service, they can now retire at 55. So that is a big change for us in the public service. And then we have the issue of pensioners and other. Government just completed negotiations with the trade unions, and they got a 13% increase in salaries over 2 triennium, and we are about implementing the conditions of service. So these are very good things. Government paid at over $30 million in back pay, tax-free. So definitely the Labour government is making a great stride in improving the quality of work for the people of St. Lucia. You would have seen that the unemployment rate has dropped significantly to single digit. So there is a lot more opportunities for people to work in the country. One of the concerns we have is that we are rapidly getting into a situation where we will have shortage of skilled persons in the workforce. And as minister with responsibility for work permit, I can attest to that because I can see the number of persons who come into St. Lucia to work and the kind of skills that are required of these persons. And we do not have enough persons in St. Lucia who have all these civil engineering, electrical engineering, and all these high-tech work that we don't have adequate persons in St. Lucia to be employed in these areas. So these people come into St. Lucia in large numbers. In the construction industry, you're seeing a lot of people coming into St. Lucia to work. My advice is we need to encourage our people, those who have the skills, to go out there and find the work, and those who do not have the skills, they need to begin to start sharpening their skills in these areas so that we can secure some of these jobs for St. Lucians. That is my advice. So on May 1st, which is Labor Day, we will have the May Day rally, which will be held at the VG Sports Complex, starting from 10 a.m. So we are inviting all workers in St. Lucia to come in. Everybody is invited. Don't ask yourself if you're a worker, you are invited. The Prime Minister will be addressing the workers. The trade union leaders will be addressing the workers, and myself as Minister of Labour. So we'll have that rally at the sports complex at VG. The other issue I want to stress on is one very critical area that touches on one of my departments, which is the Department of Gender. And we speak to the issue where the Prime Minister is making an allocation of $250,000 through the Ministry of Education to help young girls who have been experiencing the period or menstrual cycle. And this is a very topical issue, but we see it as a very significant contribution in dealing with the situation with young girls. And for persons who may not understand what young girls, especially those who are more vulnerable, are going through, we have a lot of young children, young girls, who have sacrificed their education because they are women, because men do not have period, they do not have a menstrual cycle. And therefore, women should not be disadvantaged just because they are women. Girls should not be disadvantaged just because they are girls. And I applaud the Prime Minister and cabinet members. And people say, well, politics is dominated by male, and they would not expect men to come up with that suggestion. However, I'm happy that the Prime Minister in his budget saw the need to put an allocation of $250,000 to assist girls who are vulnerable and cannot afford to buy the sanitary napkins to take care of themselves when they are experiencing the period cycle. There are students who stay away from school if they do not have their sanitary napkins. They do not go to school. And this means that they are losing very significant instructional time, and that is affecting their education. So that is a positive decision in the interest of these young girls so that they can access education whether they have a period or not, because they will be able to afford, because the government is making a contribution in that direction. That exercise is one that has already started in the country. There is somebody who has been going around. They visited my constituency, and we said we are going to work through the secondary school where we will provide the support and the children can access the sanitary napkins. It is well packaged so that they don't have it loosely. It is something that actually they take pride in using that package to carry their sanitary napkins. So I applaud the Prime Minister in taking that initiative so that our young girls will take a little more pride in themselves. There is nothing wrong with that. That's what they are as human beings, and the government has recognized that our young girls cannot be denied of any opportunity to participate in any activity in society because they cannot afford to take care of themselves because they are young girls and women. I commend the Prime Minister on that matter, and I wonder young girls in the schools. And before, we used to think that young girls would have their period at a certain age, but now we are seeing that there are young girls that are having their period a lot younger now. People say the foods they eat and other areas of development is affecting both young girls and male in terms of their hormones. However, with that, I am very confident that the Ministry of Education will put a proper system in place so that the children who are most in need of that support will be able to access the services that the government is giving. And I can recall having been in the education system where I gave 34 of the best years of my life and working with children. I can see that as a huge savings for parents. It's also a huge saving for fathers. Fathers are very concerned about their daughters, and therefore they know that definitely that is a contribution that is coming towards their pocket. So in that, I want to champion the cause on that particular issue that came out from the budget on behalf of young girls and women in St. Lucia.
Yes, Madam Minister, just a little reflection as we approach in Labor Day on the minimum wage. We know it was recent, enactment of the minimum wage. How, just an update, how satisfied are you with the progress of that policy? Taking in mind that it would have impacted some of the businessmen, some of the retail shops. I don't want to mention any name in particular, but that is SMS. Some of these places will employ a lot of unskilled, basic laborers. How has that impacted them in terms of the profit margin, in terms of the income, the earnings, and the broader aspect of securities? How has the labor code impacted these basic workers in terms of getting better income for them?
Okay, although the Minimum Wage Commission was established to come up with a minimum wage, but government decided to give them another term. And the purpose of the reappointment was to help government do the transition so that we assess how the implementation would take place. And to date, we have not received any major complaint from employees or the employer about the implementation of the minimum wage. And I am very happy that you mentioned one company people really had some concerns about, and that was SNS. And they thought that SNS was paying their workers way below the minimum wage. And when I did my investigation, surprisingly, we found that SNS did not only upgrade persons who are below the minimum wage to the minimum wage, they also upgraded the salaries of persons who are above the minimum wage. Because when you have a salary scale, you have to maintain that gap. For example, if you have somebody who is in grade 1 and somebody in grade 2, if you advance the salary of grade 1 and you do not touch grade 2, then you have closed the gap to a point where grade 1 and 2 are almost the same. So what they did, they had to increase the salary level of those in the higher level above the minimum wage, which I find was very, very interesting and very encouraging. So far, I think most of the employees who are below the minimum wage, they have been brought up to the minimum wage level, and we have not received any major complaints about employers not paying them their minimum wage.
What do you say about the security services? We know these security guys work not extra hours, but work night shifts over a different time. Has that been regulated? Will that satisfy them?
Well, we have not received any report that they are not paying them up to the level. Okay? Because when we spoke of the minimum wage, we were talking about an 8-hour period of work. And then they also included a rate per hour. So some people may say, I'm not getting the minimum wage, but you have to give the minimum working hours to equate the minimum wage. So we have not received any major complaint about people saying they are paid either below the rate or they are not getting the minimum wage level that they are supposed to receive. So we find that this activity, this policy was implemented almost seamless. Mm-hmm.
Any other questions?
Okay, well, thank you very much. All right.
Okay. Honorable Dr. Pauline Antoine Prosper, Parliamentary Secretary in the Ministry of Education, Sustainable Development, Innovation, Science, Technology, and Vocational Training, will now address us.
Good morning, everyone. Sorry. I am here to address Mr. Guy Joseph's statements on period poverty. I find that statement to be irresponsible and insensitive. I don't believe that any person who has a mother, a wife, sisters, or children should make a statement as irresponsible as this. As a former teacher, a former school principal, as a woman, I understand what young girls go through when they have a period. I have witnessed, and we should all know that most of the girls at this age experience their first period at school. And I can tell you this as a teacher and as a former school principal. As a Ministry of Education, we have a responsibility to ensure that all students have equal access to education and preserve the dignity of every young girl who attends school. Girls miss school, they miss instruction when they have a period. They face embarrassing situations. They struggle to focus in class because they have period pains, they have mood swings at that time. And many girls worry about their own situation. The Minister of Education does not operate in silos. We work as a team at the Ministry of Education. And whatever decision that is made is in consultation. I am a woman, I'm the parliamentary secretary. So when I hear that the Minister of Education is not a woman, I wonder what that statement means. Because the majority of the staff at the Ministry of Education are indeed female, and they understand what young girls go through. The allocation to the Ministry of Education is not a luxury, it is a necessity. It's about fairness, it's about health, it's about equal opportunity and access to education for all students, for all young girls in our country. If we go around the world, even airlines put sanitary napkins in the washroom for women. At many schools, the bursar, as we speak, at many secondary schools, the bursar keeps some sanitary napkins in case, because we know periods are not always regular. Periods surprise students sometimes. And so, as a responsible Ministry of Education, we cater for the needs of the students. So what the Prime Minister has done is to formalize it, to offer the assistance to schools so that we can accommodate the young women who may not be able to afford a packet of sanitary napkins, even after we have removed the VAT. And so I believe that any person who is making a statement in the 21st century, in a technological era, has to be more responsible, has to be more aware of what is happening at the school. So sometimes you wonder whether people even understand what young women go through. And the person in particular has no daughters, and I empathize with him to make a statement like this. I think we have to think further, make more responsible statements. What the government has, what the Prime Minister has done, is a small investment that will make a world of difference in the educational experience of our young girls, particularly for those of the lower economic situations. So I want to make a very strong statement in support of the allocation that the Prime Minister has made to schools. Both primary and secondary students would benefit from it because our students nowadays, they mature a lot earlier. I was very surprised when my daughter had her first menstrual cycle at 10. I couldn't understand it. And more, we realize that more young girls are getting their first period very early. And so, as a responsible government, as a government who cares about the people of St. Lucia, we are putting measures in place to accommodate our young people, to assist our young people, especially the most vulnerable ones. I thank you.
Any questions?
Yeah.
How will this initiative be implemented in the schools? Will you be able to share any details on how it will be?
At the moment, we do not have the details. However, we are working on this. We want to ensure that the money is distributed in a manner that is equitable so that the students who need it the most are going to benefit.
Does the Ministry of Health, you say you are work, there's a lot of teamwork. Does the Ministry of Health have some input into this?
Well, at Ministry of Education, there are components that the Ministry of Health, but this is a basic necessity. That doesn't need the intervention of the Ministry of Education. It is a basic necessity. It is something that all young girls need, and we do not need the Ministry of Health to tell us that or somebody else to tell us that. We do not need a father to tell us that or a mother to tell us that. It is something that everybody should know.
Are we ready to roll?
Yes.
Minister?
Good morning. Yeah, an excited type of tired. Yeah. I think a few weeks ago I was here and I spoke about Jazz of Viege and what was expected. And this morning I'm happy to report that Miku experienced its debut into the world of jazz, and I think it can be dubbed a real success. We saw what was a peaceful, serene piece of coastline transform into music, into lights, into vibes. And I think what really happened yesterday was we saw a renewed sense of identity with Miku people. Right now, the community is beaming with pride. People are excited. Our vendors, indeed, are very excited because very early into the show, I saw quite a bit of restocking happening. And I think I can say here confidently that at least 95% of the vendors who were present were constituents of Miku. And that was the whole idea of Jazz of Viege, to be able to give Miku people an opportunity to be able to benefit from what the community holds. What was a hidden gem has now been discovered, and it has generated a certain level of interest. We've heard people asking, even yesterday we had people asking about what's the next activity that's going to be held here. I even heard people speaking among themselves about bringing certain fetes here. But I need to also caution and guard against the type of activities that are going to be held at Point Viege. As a community, I mean, it is something that we hold dearly. It is our gym. Similar to Soufriere and their pitons, this is our own pitons. And we would love to ensure that whatever happens at the community level, whatever happens in terms of events, that we keep the natural landscape, that a concerted effort is made to keep Point Viege as natural as can be. We really do not want too much interference with the natural landscape of the peninsula. It is indeed the longest peninsula in St. Lucia. Those individuals who were there last night would have told you, I saw quite a few women walking in with these little hand fans, and at no point during the activity did they have any reason to use the hand fans. We got this beautiful sea breeze flowing from start to end. I mean, you should have been there to see the view, to see the vibes. And I mean, it was all white just to symbolize a certain level of purity, because Point Viege actually means a virgin point. So the white was just to capture the purity that comes with the name. And yesterday was indeed a huge success, and I'm just happy. I want to thank the patrons who were there. We saw people coming from all around St. Lucia. Many of them coming there for the first time, and that was the whole idea, to be able to showcase what we have as a community. But most importantly, I want to thank those individuals who were involved in the actual planning and organizing. I mean, we only had somewhere in the region from conceptualizing to executing, somewhere in the region about 7 weeks. And what you saw yesterday, in order to be able to achieve it in 7 weeks, you would require committed, dedicated, and hard-working individuals. And you have people like Louis Victor, Rita Hawkins, Cynthia DeRose, Larry Nelson, Arifa, Diane, the whole crew, Marlon, every single person, teacher Elsa, everyone was involved, Laverna Thompson. I mean, these people poured their heart and soul. And these individuals are actually from Miku. And they poured their heart and soul to ensure that what you saw yesterday was attainable. Also, I think for me, the most gratifying thing about this whole experience was something that I witnessed on the night before the actual activity. I had somewhere in the region about 15 to 20 young men, maybe within the age range 18 to maybe 25, young men who most times would describe them as vulnerable, they're more likely to find themselves in trouble with the law, people that usually would discard and discredit because of the homes that they come from. And these individuals were volunteers, and they came to the site, and they were there from very early in the morning. And after maybe about 12 hours of working continuously, I said to them, I think, we should probably take a break and we'll come back tomorrow morning. And the conversation surrounded, no, bossman. This is our jazz. And you see just that sense of ownership. This is our jazz, and we have to ensure that our jazz is the best jazz. And I think that was the most gratifying thing about the whole experience for me, to see that these young men can actually take ownership of this flagship activity. And they're already looking forward to what next year brings. I know that we have the capacity, we have the ability, and we've proven it. If we're able to execute this in 7 weeks, we have the ability to host main stage. And I said that the last time I said when I came here, that I'm sure after the first experience, when you come there for yourself, you too will admit that Point Vierge is indeed the new home for jazz in St. Lucia. I spoke to the Minister of Tourism. I hope that he seconds this motion, because we got that general sentiment from patrons who came there yesterday. No, we should really bring, I don't mean to take away anything from Groseilliers or Pigeon Island, but I mean, you cannot compare Pigeon Island to what we have in Point Vierge. And we deliberately kept it a secret because we know it to be exploited in a way that we could not have controlled it. So the idea is moving forward to put a management committee in place to ensure that we can have a certain level of control over what happens at the particular point. We do not want people to come and just exploit what is unique to us, what is special to us as a community. So again, I just want to say thank you to all patrons, thank you to all St. Lucians who came, thank you to the vendors, our volunteers. We got people raising their hands throughout the community, throughout the length and breadth of the community. Individuals raised their hands to be part of this activity, not as paid individuals, but as volunteers. And what it really did was to rekindle a sense of togetherness, that spirit of unity, that spirit of volunteerism that was lacking. They're able to come together and rekindle that. That was what Jazz of Vierge did for the community. And I look forward to Jazz of Vierge moving and growing from strength to strength, and hopefully we will become the new home for jazz in St. Lucia.
Question, while you're saying that...
The mic, please, Aaron.
Excuse me? Gregory Hamilton from Choice TV. Why are you saying that Jazz of Vierge and the whole vibe, it was good, and that you want to basically cap it in a sense that for it not to be exploited, but it's also economical value to your community, and as you said, within all the vibe with the people coming through, what do you intend to do with it there? Because basically it worked, and while you're saying, hey, I have to put a cap to it, but at the same time you say you're looking forward for it being the center stage.
Yeah, so the whole idea is to have a certain level of control over what happens. We would love to bring in, the idea is to bring in activities. If you were there, you would realize that where in St. Lucia can you get a backdrop like that? Imagine you have a wedding. Where in St. Lucia can you have a backdrop like that? And we would love to open it to these type of activities. What we're saying is that it has to be managed and contained in a way that is beneficial to the people of Miku North. First and foremost, it has to bring value to the people of Miku North. We want them to be, we want them to become the first beneficiaries of anything that happened in the community. It is theirs. We want them to take ownership of it. And also, I think yesterday we saw an example of that where I had most of the participants, most of the the artists. You had General Biggs, you had Shane Ross, you had Sheffer, you had quite a few. You had the Miku Dance Academy. You had New Age. New Age had not been on a stage for a very long time, and they had an opportunity to showcase their talent. We gave them that platform. We gave them the avenue where they could have gotten that level of exposure, reintroduced them to St. Lucia. And that is the whole idea of Jazz of Years, to be able to sell Miku and to give the people of Miku, our young and upcoming artists, our budding entrepreneurs, give them an opportunity to be able to showcase that avenue, that platform. Because usually they have to be taken out of the constituency to be given such an opportunity. So what we want is to ensure that even if we have weddings, somehow, some way, the people of Miku are involved. So, I mean, we have persons involved in the decoration sector. We have those people involved in food and beverage. We have the Airbnbs. We would love for the people of Miku to become the premium beneficiaries of whatever happens at Point Vierge. What we do not want is to create something where people from all over just come and, do it in a haphazard type of way where it's not controlled and it's not contained. And we have to place serious emphasis on the fact that what makes Point Vierge unique is a natural ambience, is that we do not want people coming and just have open fires. So that is why we must ensure that we leverage a certain level of control in whatever we do moving forward with Point Vierge.
Yes, so Mr. Yeah, congrats again on the Miku vibe. I have a good connection with Miku.
Yeah.
Personal connection from time, so but you speak a lot about the initial concept. You took 7 weeks. You had this management committee, but moving forward, you see initial stages. The topography is a little rough around the edges. Infrastructure. And the road networks, communication. Would that be part of your plan? You'll see an upgrade of infrastructure, sitting the capacity, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, given the fact that it was an inaugural event, given the fact that it was a gem away from everything else that many people did not know about it, in order for it to have been kept that way, if you had infrastructure where everybody could have access, then it would not have been what it was. So now that it has been exposed, I mean, we would have had a few tiffin issues. People expressed what some of their concerns were. We had a little issue with dust. These are some things that we're going to look to mitigate against moving forward. We're going to look forward to putting in we must bring in the infrastructure naturally. And now that we've opened up the space and people are aware of what it is, we are going to do everything that we can to ensure that we make it even more accessible moving forward, more motorable, ensure that the experience is even better year after year. And what makes Miku special in that I think one of the biggest issues we have with Pigeon Island now is access and traffic control management. In Miku, you can actually access the village through 5 locations from the main road. So there are 5 accesses from the main road. So you can easily direct and redirect traffic in and out of the community without having any kind of traffic congestion there. So it really eliminates that problem, and I think it places a bit of pressure on those individuals who have the activities in the north, because you already have so much traffic in the north because of the hotels and whatnot, and when you converge that with traffic from Jazz, then it becomes a little bit chaotic and a bit difficult to manage. We don't have so much activity in the east coast and on the south and in the south, and the idea is we can now shift some of the attention, shift some of the activity. And I think even from my entrance into politics, I said one of my biggest concerns was the fact that when you leave the airport here on our international airport, where we have majority of our tourists coming in, and you drive, there was almost absolutely no reason to stop anywhere in Miku. So you'd pass from the Trumase Bridge and you'd get to Prale, and there was no wow factor, nothing to get you to stop to spend a US dollar. And tourism is the main economic driver in this country. Tourism is the main economic driver. And I felt that Miku people were being shortchanged in that regard. Miku North was being shortchanged in that regard because we pay VAT like everybody else. We contribute, and before tourism, I mean, Miku was we all know Miku was an agricultural belt, and we were the ones, Miku and other valleys were the ones that really held the economy together. And when the banana industry more or less broke down or met its demise, we saw the effects in the community. And I felt that we had to find some way to bring that type of economic activity back into the community. And I think Point Vierge gives us that perfect opportunity. So now people they know what exists. We showed it to them last night. There's a lot. It generated a lot of excitement. I hear there's a buzz. I heard it talk all over the country. Those individuals were there. And last night we saw people from everywhere. I saw Darren Sami there. I saw Boo Hinson there. So everybody there last night, and everybody was in awe of what, and they never knew that existed in Miku. And even when I posted the videos, they said they thought probably maybe that was further down in Miku, but not in the village of Miku. They did not believe that we held such a treasure, such a gem in the village of Miku. So I'm happy that now people are aware of it. And I say I'm really looking forward to this now creating. We have so many vendors in Miku. And now I cannot imagine the opportunities that lie therein now that we've exposed Point Vierge. I cannot imagine what it's going to do for our farmers are now going to have a market. I mean, it's just going to change the whole atmosphere of Miku. And I look forward to working closely with a management committee to ensure that the people of Miku can benefit from our newfound gem.
Just shortly, you mentioned the vendors, 90% of the vendors, community participation. What about the corporate sponsorship or the catering? Was the corporate sponsorship involved in supporting this venture?
Yeah, I mean, I must thank First National personally and all the other sponsors that came on board. First National was our biggest sponsor, and I know that they got value for their money, and they were very happy because last night I had a conversation with a rep from First National, and they've more or less almost agreed to going bigger and better next year. Given what they saw this year, they were very satisfied, and they think that their investment was well spent, and they're looking forward to going bigger and better with Jazz Vierge. And one thing we want to ensure, even if we go to a main stage, I would really love, because Jazz Vierge has meaning for us. The name in itself has meaning. There's value in it. We would love to keep the name. Whatever activity comes there in terms of jazz, we'd not want to ever change the name from Jazz Vierge. It can be Jazz Vierge or Jazz Vierge Kingdom Night, but it has to keep the name Jazz Vierge, has to remain, because I mean there's a lot of meaning in it for us. There's a lot of value in what it was. But as it relates to the corporate sponsors, we got quite a bit of assistance from the corporate sponsors. Those people who have a genuine interest. I think Bryson Company and them, they also did very well. St. Lucia Tourism Authority really assisted us, and I must really thank them for the work that they did and the team that they gave us. I mean, they gave us some technical staff to support us on the ground. There's no way that we would have been able to do everything that you saw there by ourselves, and they really came good in terms of the assistance that they provided. So I must also thank them. And all the other sponsors, even those people within the community, their sponsorship may not have been, they're not in a position to give you the 50,000 that First National would have offered. However, they came on board and in their own way made a contribution that really made last night successful. Little groups came together and provided little contributions because, and as I said, what they wanted to see, their jazz, which is Miku jazz, become the best jazz in St. Lucia. And they can rest assured, I mean, with time, it's just a matter of time before we become the maker of jazz in St. Lucia. Yeah. Thank you.
Excellent. Just a question though, would you be able to provide some more information on the policy proposal for the allowance for the protective services officers to be able to retire at 55 or 20 years and get a pension from NIC?
What exactly would you like to know about? Because I thought
When
that.
does this start? I think speaking to the Fire Service Association, they wanted what their concerns were really the gratuity. They were hoping it would come back. Is that being looked at as well? Will there be, I guess, legislative changes that will have to take place to facilitate this?
Yeah.
What it's like?
Yeah, naturally they would have some changes that have to take place. In terms of the gratuity, I think when that whole issue of gratuity was stopped in 2003, a graph was displayed as to the trajectory and to show that we were not in a position to afford, given what we saw in terms of birth rates and contributions, and we would not have been able to afford. Had we continued in 2003, we would not have been able to afford. I think this Prime Minister, given his prudent way of thinking and the way that he deals with economics, he would have looked at the situation and realized firsthand that we're in a position where we probably can return the 55 years in terms of the pension if with 20 years service. But further than that, I know that he has already put together a group to look at, if not necessarily a gratuity, but a retirement plan for civil servants across the border. So I think somewhere in the proposal there was mention of the committee coming together and to looking at what options, because we have to be, we have to be realistic, and not just because we want to satisfy or get people happy and excited that we're just going to make grand announcements. The announcement that this Prime Minister has made has been achievable, they've been realistic, and he has gone and he has shown that he can go and actually do it, and it has to also be affordable. And when the committee comes back with their findings and tell us what we can do, what we cannot do, I mean, then we'll be in a better position to know about the gratuity. But I think just given the fact that we already looking at for protective services, given the nature of work that the protective services does, imagine a policeman who joins the force at 18 years old, and by 55, you would have been in the service for somewhere in the region of, 47 years? Of 27 years? You would have served 27 years and been running, and the general nature of policing and fire work, you see what the firemen have to endure if they're in, day out, what they have to endure. And I think that it's a very good move to bring them back into the 55 bracket. And I say that sometimes you pass in the city and you see a man who is maybe somewhere in the region of 60 years, and he may not have the physical ability to do the work that is, it's one that is, it takes a toll on you physically, and you need the strength in order to execute. You need to be there mentally, you need to be mentally fit to execute. And sometimes after, and I think it's proven, when you serve, especially you look at militaries, for instance, and the number of men and women who, after serving in the military for much shorter periods, suffer from PTSD and all these other issues. So I think it's a good move to actually bring in this policy. I know that, well, I've not heard the concerns of the fire service, sadly. But I mean, if they have any concerns, it's something that we're more than willing to have a sit down and discussion to see what their concerns are, what we can do to help clear their concerns if they do. But generally, from my own interaction, and that's just my opinion, those firemen, those policemen who I've interacted with after the budget seem very excited about this move. And I know that the association represents the body, but those I've interacted with seem very excited about this move. And it is just one step and in the right direction. As you said, consideration will be given to whether or not we're in a position to be able to put together more or less a retirement plan. It could probably be a where you have a co-payment where they make a part contribution. But we look at what options are there and what can we afford, and then we would be able to know better what can we do for the men and women of St. Lucia.
Just to be clarified, it's 20 years. After 20 years, they can retire, and also if they reach 55, whatever.
Yeah. So we join the service at different periods in our life. You would have to have a minimum period of 20 years in terms of service. So, and a minimum age of 55 years. So I mean, the ideal situation would be you join at maybe 25, you join at you can join at 35 again, or 35 is the cap. But then you have a situation where you have individuals joining the service. When I joined the force in 2010, there was a young lady who was 36. And she would be a perfect example, because had it not been for that particular situation, she would have to go to work until she's 65. And I mean, now she would be able to retire, and she would have the 20 years service. You have individuals who join, that's why I said, imagine you have a gentleman who joins the force at 18 years, and if he has to retire at 65, it puts a little bit of a toll on him and his family. So it's 20 years and age 55. So it's not a situation, if you join, and by any means, the oldest you can join would be 35, the oldest that you can join the police force. So your 20 years, anybody would have gotten to the 20 years by age 55 had they joined within this specific period.
And when does this take effect?
Well, I guess the Prime Minister will make a general announcement on that one. All right, thank you.
I hope you'll enjoy the jazz in Vierge Miku last evening. But I'm here to respond to comments made. I saw it on social media. I think it was a UWP meeting where the support initiative that the Prime Minister announced in his budget for period poverty was attacked. And of course, some statements were made. I think I'm speaking to St. Lucia at large, and those of you who are responsible for speaking on initiatives and carrying out the news, that the statement made by Guy Joseph about period poverty must be strongly condemned and rebuked. I think for most of us in our society, and we know that we are developing, some of us might be hearing of the term period poverty for the first time. But if you Google period poverty, you would recognize that the term exists in the lexicon of those who dealing with poverty reduction issues and vulnerability. In fact, United Nations Women Organization would speak to billions of women across the world who are exposed. But in our own country, I think a lot of our mothers, sisters, teachers are aware of the issues associated with period poverty in St. Lucia. And of course, the Prime Minister has contributed to an initiative that has been ongoing. My daughter, Jeremy, says that she buys sanitary napkins and store in her desk. She's at the St. Joseph's Convent as a teacher, because sometime a child may forget her little pouch and come to school and may have an accident, and these things happen. It is an issue, and of course it affects young women. And even in the calculations of the poverty line, a 17-year-old young teenage boy would consume food items if you're looking at the indigent line, but the young lady at that same age group also consume non-food items that affects her monthly. So in establishing the poverty line for a family, you would have to take into consideration for a young lady, a young teenage girl, food and non-food items because of what's happening to her monthly. So we would factor that in our poverty line. And of course, when you want a society that's more equal, when you want to create equal opportunity for both boys and girls and stop the marginalization of our daughters, it's important that we respond accordingly and make that time of the month a lot fairer, equal opportunity for our young ladies. So yes, we strongly rebuke at the criticism level at the initiative. Also, I need to highlight that the issue of poverty is not just a matter for young ladies or mothers or aunts or for female teachers. It is for fathers, uncles, it is for men as well. For the fathers who are single fathers with daughters, they have to address the issue, and that is to help bring about the confidence of our young ladies, to stand with them. You would have to address your daughter, if you have a daughter, as to how to deal with issues like this, because you are the father, you are the uncle, you are the brother. So I really do not want to say a lot, because I think St. Lucians generally would understand that this thing needs to be rebuked. But of course, to enlighten our public that the issue of period poverty is not something coined by St. Lucians. It is a discussion going on for the longest while. We have had local initiatives by some teachers on their own, trying to respond to the issues by themselves. Sometimes teachers run across to the nearby health center to get support from the health center to address a matter like that in schools. So there have been some sort of unorganized way of dealing with it. But the government of St. Lucia, the heart and the kindness of the Prime Minister of St. Lucia, say, look here, let us deal with poverty issue and not just leave it on the pockets of teachers to deal with it or persons who stand by, but let our young ladies know that provision is made for them. And that is a society, when provision is made that way, and we're talking about period poverty, but our aspiration is to create a society where everything for vulnerable people is made available, so that we approach social justice. This is where social justice comes in, that they know that provision is made at school and feel comfortable. I do not have it, but I am cared for. A basic need. And I think that is the heart of the government, and we are moving in this direction, not just on period poverty, but on other vulnerabilities within our society. And of course, I think of electricity. And of course, you heard that there will be a new Electricity Act, of course, to see how we could regulate the business and to make it more affordable, seeing that there's new technologies on the way. See how we dealt with mobile phones in the past, when there was only one cable and wireless alone participating and had a monopoly. It was this government that broke it up, and now we have other players to make it available. See how difficult it is to have a housing lot, and how this government is approaching the issue of, if you 40 years on a plot of land in a particular location, the government is looking at how you can get to own it. So the heart of this government is in the direction of, one, equity, social justice, and empowerment of all people. one day in the life of a young lady not being prepared for her menstrual cycle can miss an exam, a critical exam, and of course you can have generational repercussions as a result of this. It can happen. And for some of us men who do not experience it, I think it may be far-fetched. But I'm fortunate that I grew up being the only boy between 4 girls, my mother, my grandmother. And I know the discussion surrounding, and I'm not ashamed of ladies having period. It's not something to be ashamed of. God made us that way, and we hold ourselves good and proper. We just need to provide for our people. Many years ago, I'm aware, at homes, mothers would cut pieces of cloth and shape it up for their daughters and what have you. It was the common practice then. We've moved beyond that. And sometimes I see the cost of the products on the shelf. It's expensive for our young ladies to afford. So when you would give a young man $20 to go to school for the day, sometimes if you can afford, or $10, a young lady in a month would consume more than that for the month because she needs to make provision for this. And therefore, by providing $250,000 across the island for all schools, you are creating a more equal society so that the young ladies can receive the $20 like the young boys to focus on probably basic food items because provision is made for this. So it's important. I thought that I should say this because when I listened to what was said, it is someone that unfortunately has spent 15 years as a parliamentary representative, many years as the Minister of Economic Affairs. But when I listen, he has not heard the word period poverty. Would have traveled and represented government all over, yet it seemed like it was the first time he was hearing the word period poverty. I think we need to take this into consideration as we prepare for a period of when we come to account and when those persons seek to ask persons for them to represent them in parliament and across the world. We need to take this thing into consideration. I thank the Prime Minister immensely and passionately for continuing to move the dial as it relates to poverty reduction in all its form. We are not where we're supposed to be, but we need to be careful with an administration that will come and pull back the gains we have made so far. So I applaud the Prime Minister, and I want for you to join in your own space and time to recognize that it's a new day for our young ladies, and maybe the criticism is too late. It could have been done a lot earlier. If somebody had said that, I probably would want to agree, but better late than never. We have started, we are moving in that direction. The only thing is for us to move a little higher and to continue promote, justice, social justice for our people. So the issues of scholarships, again, will be coming up, opportunities for our young ladies. We will look at the data and see how they're not marginalized, and every aspect of our being. Yeah.
How will this initiative be implemented? Is it something where monies will be given to parents, or will the school be purchasing the items to distribute to students that they identify?
I'm sure the operations within the Ministry of Education would find the most suitable. At one time I was thinking of having dispensers in particular location. We probably may or may not. The teachers having resources to continue to have their stocks maybe is a cheaper and more efficient way at this time. They would reflect on it. But the financial capacity has not been there. So you find that teachers on their own have been doing something. Some ministers have been, I know the minister Poyot in her constituency at her schools have been doing something. Honorable Kenson Kazime on his own have been doing something where period poverty is concerned. So it's not that we are starting, it is that there have been ongoing initiatives recognizing that it has been a problem. What the Prime Minister has done is to say, look here, let me assist nationally by providing the resources so you do the best arrangement, but of course, our young ladies are taken care of.
Minister, you have Bexo Jazz for the second time in a row this Thursday. Tell us about that.
Thank you. The community, the beautiful thing about Bexo Jazz is I don't even want to think of the event, but the arrangement that is made, a vehicle that is established, the Hills and Valleys organization that will remain with the constituency even when my time would have come to an end, that it will continue to host events like jazz. So I am happy for the event, but I'm happy that in Bexo, that the site is known for hosting activities like jazz and not just a place that floods. Not a place that when we have torrential rainfall that we experience flooding, but Bexo has to be a haven where people who live there can feel just like what persons experience at Grosile, at Ancillary, what happened last night in Miku. Bexo on Thursday will be like this, and I'm hoping with Hills and Valleys we will continue to elevate that type of experience in the constituency. So there'll be more than jazz in the future. There will be other forms of activities. I'm hoping in December we could have a good lighting experience like Festival of Lights and having an experience. So I'm hoping all of that comes alive in so that the people of Bexo can experience and enjoy the community in a different way.
Any questions?
So just to go back to the period poverty, thing, I think listening to the opposition yesterday to one of the claims, if I'm remembering correctly, that was made is that there are other areas as well that needs attention. So I think the statement was even made that the schools don't have tissue in the bathrooms. Can you respond to that sentiment?
No, I can't respond to the part that if the person who made the comments stated that in addition to this we need supplies, I would understand, but the focus was placed on a sinister sort of motive for coming up with the initiative, and that is to me what struck me, that the member the former PAL rep who was making the comments probably have never heard of the term period poverty, and that's what I was struck by. And I understand that there are some areas in development that I probably may not be aware of. We talk about the SDGs and we have a number of specialized areas, but silence is extremely golden, that if I do not know about something, I can stay silent than to launch an attack on it. And I think on the issue of period poverty, the issue of how it has affected young ladies, affected dignity, the stigma attached to it, we have grown. And I'm thank God that we have bold children today than before. But at the time when our young ladies were shy, they would have disappeared, hurt themselves even more and never surface again because of that experience. But what we've done is to move beyond that, is to say, hey, in your boldness, and thank God for our brilliant athletes like the Julian Alfred adults, it should be available for young people. And there's more reason why we should do it for young people, because they are at the developing stages and we do not want them to miss out on opportunities for the complete, thorough development.